So, as you know, I've had a couple of conversations recently with some other lefties, and one of the things that I have really tried to get across to a lot of these um, people and the conversations, and just the other like conversations I want to have sort of with other people, sort of myself, is look, on the left, there are things you do not see a lot of people talk about. And I really do mean that a lot of the time. So, domestic policy, we've pretty much got that covered on the left. Foreign policy, not so much. Defense policy, don't see a lot of lefties talking about that too often. Or if they do, they're really talking about it in a very negative aspect. Um, and again, as we've discussed in the past, defense policy, quite, quite necessary for the UK to really think about, to be honest, at this moment in time. But also, when I had my chat with Kevin Logan, I brought up business. The left sort of ignores a giant swathe of potential voters that you can bring over. And not only that, but that's funding and a ton of other stuff. And this is why a lot of people, I've had a lot of criticism in my past saying, well, why don't you criticize when Labour goes to talk to big businesses or anything like that? And I'm like, well, if you are going to form a government and you are not going to talk to businesses or business groups, you are ceding the ground at that point to the right wing. Who do you think those groups are going to go on and endorse? And the thing is, the left can do a lot to talk to businesses, because it very often the conversation around the left really focuses on workers' rights. And yes, get it, completely agree. Workers' rights really important. However, what do we do in terms of business strategy? What do we do in situations where you get things like Port Talbot going on and the steel industry at the moment, where we're losing about 30% of our steel production, something that's, pretty important. We've just had another potential disaster possibly coming, where we stopped a takeover by a Chinese firm to take over a chip manufacturing company in Wales as well. So there's a ton of different areas when it comes to business. And not only that, how do we stimulate business growth and business investment? Because not every company is going to want to become, either worker owned or cooperatively owned. You also have the fact that, as I've said, 80% of the UK's business infrastructure is aimed at SMEs. That's small to medium businesses. 80% of our business infrastructure is aimed at them. And that can be a business in, depending, there are a couple of different definitions, between like 10 to 500. Like, that's how many like employees they will have. And you might have in your town or area or city a lot of SMEs that could have existed 10, 20, 15 years, maybe never had more than 5 or 6 employees because that's all they've needed. What are we doing? What are we saying to them to support them, and how we can get their businesses to grow so that they can employ more people, so that they can do, better business, or, feel comfortable being able to take on more people and more work because they know that the government is providing a good business environment for them to expand and to grow into. Apprenticeships is another area where we should really look at this as well, because SMEs cry out constantly how much they would love to have and take on apprentices, but they can't, because the apprenticeship levy is pretty much grabbed almost totally by big businesses, very large businesses, who then don't go on more often than not to hire those apprentices. So these apprentices end up doing like 2-3 years, basically as a form of cheap labor for that business. And meanwhile, an SME would love to have, one of those people working there in their business, but they don't get it because the levy just gets taken up by all those massive companies. Again, kind of a big problem. Something that on the left we should be really talking about and, not afraid to get involved with. But you do not see a lot of people on the left talk about that because, oh, capitalism. And that sort of shuts down the conversation. That's very sad because it almost feels like at that point, you don't really want to have that conversation. Now, let me also say and explain why we should not be afraid to be involved in these types of conversations. So, for the past, I'd say, really year or so, really since last year, you have seen more and more right wingers go after farmers, not just right wingers, but the far right as well. You are seeing everything that's going on in France as well at the moment. Who are the people backing those protesters? It's not the left wing. It's not the left wing, it's the right wing. Why? Because the left wing almost, and it's not 100% true. There are sort of, left wing groups for farmers and who do talk about that stuff on the left. The problem is not enough people really do talk about it. Not enough people bring attention to these types of things. And of course, what happens if you walk into a room and, oh, it's full of farmers and you go, not really interested in talking to any of these people and walk away? What do you think happens? Well, you cede the ground to the right wing who come in and go, hey, farmers, we got you covered. Because what are the right wing now saying to these farmers? They're going, oh, look, we are, quote, the West, and we are losing our traditionalism. We're losing our traditional values. And oh, my word, we're ignoring all these poor farmers. Look at how they're being hard done by all these the intelligentsia and the liberal metropolitan elite, ignoring the rural issues that these farmers have, ignoring their sort of needs and what they sort of want to do and what's going on. And of course, even in France, as a lot of people said, French farmers do occupy a very, very sort of cherished seat. It could be an entire issue talking about French farmers in themselves and how powerful they are as a group. But make no mistake, the right wing are targeting farmers. You saw in Poland the Peace and Justice Party really targeting farmers when they were trying to get re-elected. Really trying to do that. You've seen in the Netherlands, Wilders got a lot of his votes from farmers and those who work in the farming agricultural industry. You were seeing again in Germany, people like the ADF going after farming and rural areas. And this is, as I said, because the left does not have these conversations or seems to be really scared about having these conversations. And if you do not have these conversations, where do you think people like these farmers are going to go? If someone like, these farmers are speaking, as I said, oh, these poor farmers, they need help, and it's the right wing saying that, or even worse, the far right saying that, where do you think these farmers are going to go? Where do you think they're going to end up? Where do you think they're going to put their votes and their voice and their money into political parties? It's not going to be parties on the left. It's going to be parties on the right. And in this case, as we are seeing, more and more the far right. So this is something, again, to bear in mind and something to think about. So I hope that gives you a bit of food for thought today. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.